Welcome to the How I Met Your Mother podcast for the episode entitled Cleaning House. This is the second episode of the 6th season and the 114th episode of the series. With us today is Craig Thomas, co-creator and executive producer, and Stephen Lloyd, executive producer and writer of the episode. We also have with us a new member of the writing team, producer Tami Sagher.
I'm Alec Lev, and let's get going here. All right, Craig, who's the mother?
No one's ever asked that before.
All right, so we've heard before that Barney's mother told him that Bob Barker is his father, and that is most likely not true. In this episode, you've expanded on this idea of the lies that parents tell you. How did that come into the room?
Yeah, I mean, we try to make sure that every episode has kind of one coherent theme or like master that it's serving, and this one was definitely lies parents tell kids. And Stephen, correct me if I'm wrong, Stephen Lloyd wrote this episode. It seemed like it started off with us all just kind of talking about stories that happened to us. And some of them didn't go in the script, but it kind of got us on a roll to do this episode. And it just felt like everyone had some insane story about their parents lying to them. And often it was out of love and it was sweet, and that was the ultimate theme we really wanted to get to, because we tell these big crazy stories where Barney has Bob Barker as his dad, and it's really tonally big and insane, but behind it all we wanted to know what was the emotional reality behind it all, and the emotional reality was his mom loved him and wanted to give him a better answer, a better version of what reality actually was. And there's something very sweet about that, and it also kind of helps explain why Barney is the most amazing liar that we've ever met, perhaps one of television's greatest liars in the history of the medium. He kind of inherited from his mom, but also at the same time can't see through his mom's bullshit for 1 second and just ate it up because his mom gave him all of this stuff out of love, and some part of him knows that, I think. So that's kind of the emotional theme of the episode, and we all started just talking about, like, okay, none of us were lied to and told that Bob Barker was our father, but what were the kinds of lies that you kind of try to test out if there's enough material to tell a story. And we started telling stories, and one of them that went in the episode was this cough syrup thing, and it used to be a flashback in the episode, right? We used to have a whole scene of seeing young Marshall get drugged with cough syrup for being too hyper. But that was from a real story from one of our writers. Can I say who? Is it actionable if I talk about his name? Chris Harris. Well, let me just say this. Defendant Chris Harris claims against the plaintiff, his mother, that... plaintiff? Is that the right word? Yeah. Anyway, he says, and his mother to this day denies it, that he and his siblings... I think the mom is the defendant. Mom's the defendant. He's the plaintiff. I knew I screwed that up. He claims, and his mom literally denies it still, that when he and his several siblings would get too hyper, his mom would just come up and feel their forehead and said, "Oh, you feel hot. You feel you're burning up. We gotta give you this Benadryl," I believe it was, which is not a fever reducer, if I'm right.
But it does have alcohol in it.
It does have significant alcohol content. And would come up to him and then drug him and his siblings, and they would pass out, and none of them realized until they were adults how weird this was. Confronted her about it, and then she said, "No, I didn't do that. You kids got sick a lot."
And I gave you an antihistamine for it.
I gave you an antihistamine for your high fevers that you had. And I guess that wouldn't go under love. That was more convenience, parental convenience, right, rather than parental love. I'm sure she's a lovely woman.
Absolutely.
And I'm sure Chris is wrong, in fact, right?
Yeah.
He's probably made it all up.
He should be the defendant.
He's the defendant.
So,
the liar.
That makes sense.
But he said he confronted her about it, and she said, no, it never happened. So who knows? It's a mystery. What were some other ones?
There's
Rabia's
story.
There's Rabia's, yeah. Which is Rabia said that her... Do you want to tell it? Or... Well, Rabia said that, she... her dog passed away, and her parents, to protect her brother and her, said that the dog had gotten a job as a watchdog at some big factory, and it was keeping the factory safe and everything. But the lie backfired when Robbie and her brother were constantly saying, well, let's visit the factory and see the dog.
And I think the factory was in Pennsylvania.
Yeah.
Because Robbie grew up in it was New Hampshire?
Vermont.
No, Vermont, sorry, yeah, in Vermont.
So-
and her parents wanted to set this lie somewhere far enough away that the kids wouldn't want to drive to it, but they didn't go far enough.
I love
Because
that.
the kids did want to go to Pennsylvania.
And they kept asking, and finally they said, like, the dog's dead. It got shot during a break-in. Happy? And so, like, suddenly...
But
like,
also it acted as a hero.
Right.
They
So-
did that too.
the dog, yeah. So in trying to protect their kids from this tragedy, your beloved dog died. They ended up having to basically then say that the dog died in a hail of gunfire, in a massacre, but protecting people, I guess, in sort of in some particular way. So.
And I love that kids would be that invested in a factory.
Yeah.
Just like he's protecting a factory.
I wonder if she ever got what kind of factory that was.
No.
It's a factory where lies are made. But the dog's death became so much more gruesome.
Yeah.
As part of the lie. Like, it was a well-meaning lie out of love, like to not want to hurt the kids.
Right.
But then the dog ends up getting like torn apart by machine gun fire.
Bleeding out.
Went down
on
in a
the
blaze of
factory
glory.
floor, staring up at some horrible masked gunman. But
Yeah, that was a good one. And Robbie, you literally, like, that was part of what we liked about the story, was like, you don't think about some of this stuff until you're an adult, because even in talking about it in the writer's room, Robbie was still kind of like, yeah, I guess it was kind of messed up that they went that violent with the dogs and knives. Like, it hadn't even really to this day fully occurred to her, and she said she went and talked to her mom, like, that night about it, and her mom was like, no, the dog was a hero. I think we were right about not keeping up the lie, but, like, justifying the lie. Like,
right.
The dog, that was a good lie for you guys, because, like, the dog was a total hero.
Right.
But it's like, but it went down.
Yeah, but it was blown to bits by
smithereens.
bullets. What are you...
That is my favorite part of this job, by the way, is that it necessitates us just telling stories to each other.
Yeah, and that doesn't even go in the episode, that one. Maybe it'll go in a future episode at some point, but like
Right.
it gives the feeling to the episode, it leads to the episode and telling all these stories, and half of them go in, or less than half. Like the one that's in this episode of Ted, Ted says that he was told as a kid, very young, he was allergic to bacon.
Right.
And wound up discovering in adulthood that he was not, and he missed out on eating the best food on the planet for 20 years for no reason, and is very distraught about it. That wasn't an exact story, but I think Dan Greger, one of our new writers who just joined this season, had a story about it. Were you there for that?
No, but Stephen was telling me about it.
Dan, we're going through McDonald's or something. Dan's father, who keeps kosher, I guess wanted Dan to keep kosher, but didn't want to actually go through the rules, so he would just say to him about Big Macs, they're just as good without the meat. And so Dan would eat these Big Macs with basically just like bread and lettuce and special sauce, and cheese, and then he said got in arguments with kids. He'd say like, Big Macs are just as good without the meat. Like, no, they're not. and Dan, I think rebelled against that big time in college, and is now like the biggest carnivore of all time.
But just like, and remembers unquestioningly just going up to the McDonald's, the very confused McDonald's cashier, and just saying, no, we just want the bun and the cheese and the lettuce.
Let me get this straight. You want us to hold the meat?
And hold the meat, none of the meat. So those were some of the stories that came up in the room about the various ways our parents lied to us.
Yeah.
I guess out of love, or maybe we just all
some were out of love.
Parents. Some of them were out of love, I suppose, but that certainly led to the story of Barney's mom. Very, very sweet ending of Barney's mom. Really was just trying to protect him and sort of improve his world as best she could. And it's played very sweetly by Frances Conroy. We literally just shot that scene like an hour and a half ago. That was our last shot of the production week, and now we're doing this little podcast, and people were like, I think Tami, you were like openly weeping at the run-through.
I teared up at the table read, just them reading from the scripts, and then at the run-through where they're literally just like walking through the paces, then tears started coming down. I'm glad I missed the actual taping, because I would have interrupted it with my tears.
It just gets very quiet on set, and you hear like the cameramen sniffling a little bit, and there's something just so sweet about it. It just
her connection to both Wayne Brady and to Neil is just fantastic.
Very sweet. The actress Frances Conroy just has a very, very sweet chemistry with both of them.
Are you surprised as the writer of it, you created these words, or you all did, and then you see it there, does it still surprise you? Is there still something new when the actors actually are doing it.
Oh, absolutely, and something people usually don't realize when you just because your name is on the script, it's still you're 12 of you write it. The story is broken by the whole group to begin with. So when you're sent out with a lot of like story ideas and even dialogue a lot of times already, and then when you bring
and
back
painful childhood stories from writing.
exactly, and then everybody else adds jokes and stuff. So it's my name is on it, but it would be entirely inaccurate for me to say I wrote the episode. I am one of the writers that contributed to it, and nothing more. But absolutely, when you see the actors there, they all bring.
Tammy and I are both rolling our eyes for the record. She wrote an amazing draft.
Very humble, kind.
very sweet and overly humble.
Yeah.
Stephen Lloyd.
Not at all.
See, why do you need to claim credit for everything? What is that?
I wasn't loved enough. My parents should have lied to me more.
Your parents not lied to you nearly enough, apparently.
But absolutely, I mean, you see the actors bring an extra spin to it and things that you didn't see before, and often you have it in a particular way in your head, and you have to let it go, and you see it on set, and you say, "Oh, that way I didn't see before, and that's interesting, and even better than I thought of, and brings an entirely new dimension to things."
Again, like when we're sitting in that room, just reading off the screen, like what it's going to sound like when they sing that song, then to be at the table read, and it's just it's like it's another world to have Ben Vereen.
Yeah, it's a pretty cool production week when you get to have like Ben Vereen and Wayne Brady like serenading us all week, just singing this song. It was just so cool. The only problem is they sounded so good you didn't want Barney to come and it up. Some part of me is like, no, Neil, why are you ruining this? They sounded great. All right, we wrote it that way, but they were fantastic. Anyway,
I guess I have one more question now that you're moving into season 6, which is a nice, long, healthy life, knock on wood, that it keeps on going for a TV show these days, for a comedy these days. I'm sure you've all done writing outside of TV shows, scripts, shorter things, to give characters lives for 6 years. It's so different than writing 120 pages of a small character arc. I'm curious about the building of the character this late into their lives, six seasons into their lives. What's a little bit about what's different in Ted that you didn't see at the beginning, how they've grown a little bit?
Well, it's actually great to be able to. You're sort of having a conversation as a writer. You're kind of having a conversation with past you in a way. Like you kind of got like that episode where Barney, I think it was Showdown in season 2, where you learn that Barney thinks his dad is Bob Barker. That was kind of an alley to this episode's Oop in a way. It was kind of like great. We always found it kind of fascinating that Barney was a guy who believed that. But it was always so big and crazy, and we always knew we wanted to kind of puncture that someday and see him have to move beyond that lie. But that's the great thing of being able to go 6 seasons, because you can. This episode 602 never would have existed without episode 250, whatever Showdown was in the middle of season 2. So that's the great thing. You find stuff and you put stuff out there 3 years ago that then you pick up on. That's the beauty of TV, I think. Anyway, this podcast was brought to you by Benadryl.
Thank you all for listening.